Yeah, I think I have a pretty good office window. If you're going for the best seat in the building, I'd say I have it. And yeah, it's phenomenal countryside. I mean, it's green, lush rainforest as you fly over. The mountains are incredibly rugged with waterfalls. Almost anywhere you turn, you'll see a waterfall. And they're just absolute beautiful country.
In the island nation of Papua New Guinea, more than 80% of its nearly 7 million people live in isolated villages. Many of those villages are accessible only by foot or by airplane. In 1964, the Seventh-day Adventist Church established Adventist Aviation services. Today, its 3 airplanes provide critical services to both the church and the growing nation, transporting workers, cash crops, and essential materials. Adventist Aviation Services flies out of Goroka, the capital of the Eastern Highlands Province. Travelers and traders have known of New Guinea's existence for thousands of years, but until the 20th century, they completely ignored its highland interior, assuming it uninhabited. In 1930, explorers looking for gold were astonished to discover that the highlands were actually Papua New Guinea's most densely populated region, home to over 1 million people who had no idea that the outside modern world existed.
Now as the expedition penetrates into more remote and virtually unexplored regions, the trail becomes increasingly difficult. Trees are felled to form crude bridges over fast-flowing streams. Because of the urgency of the need, the missionary cannot wait for roads and airstrips and modern transport. Missionary Barnard felt that his party was continually blessed with divine protection as they carried the gospel commission to the remotest corner of this needy section of the Lord's vineyard. When the people heard that a medical missionary was in their district, they carried this stretcher case many miles over difficult terrain to the field clinic. Examination shows that this man has pneumonia, jaundice, and other complications. He too needs hospitalization, but there is no hospital.
Adventist Aviation actually commenced back in 1964 with the purchase of the first Cessna 180, which was named the Andrew Stewart after a former South Pacific missionary, and that was piloted by Len Barnard and Colin Winch, and they had raised the funds for that aircraft with some help from Quiet Hour and other individual donors. 50 years ago there were no roads at all in this country, particularly in the highlands. Many of the highlands areas were just being opened to outside influence, and in some cases Len Barnard was the first one into areas when the government declared it as being safe for foreign nationals, foreign missionaries to move into an area. All of those areas were inaccessible by any other way than walking, and so there was a huge need. One of the things that hasn't changed is there's still very poor road access to most of particularly the highlands regions of this country. There are some roads. Many of them are in a state where they're almost unusable.
Because of the rough topography of Papua New Guinea with big rivers and mountains that need to be crossed, it's almost impossible and uneconomical to put road network systems in. And even once you do have the roads in, then it's difficult and expensive to maintain those roads. So that's why we have aircraft, so that we can go out to these small villages. Most of them have short airstrips which we can land the aircraft in.
3 years ago I opened a new airstrip. Back in the 80s they had a road to that particular area and you could travel it in 3 or 4 hours. When I went out to inspect the airstrip, that took us over 12 hours and we destroyed 2 vehicles, one getting in and one coming out. A 3 or a 4 minute flight can represent a good full day's hiking, very rigorous hiking at that. Yes, not too much. Yeah, I'm rain, but I'm not too much. Okay. Papua New Guinea is still a developing country in the sense that there is no welfare service, and so particularly for those outside of the major centres, sole means of support is subsistence farming, we would call it. What they can grow in their own gardens for their own needs, and if they can grow excess, to be able to sell that. And so those isolated areas are actually very dependent on air services. There's not a good road infrastructure. There is a road that goes from the port of Lae on the north coast up through the spine of the highlands, through Goroka here onto Mount Hagen. But apart from that, in terms of roading into the local communities, it's mainly walking tracks only. There are still huge regions of Papua New Guinea that are very, very isolated and very, very dependent on air services for getting their services out to them. Teachers, nurses, basic supplies, things like cooking oil and flour and soap and things like that, that salt that we take for granted, and also the only means for getting any of their excess produce out to market so that they can have a source of income to pay school fees. There's no free education in Papua New Guinea. Everybody has to pay school fees, whether it's a government or a privately run school. Everybody has to pay for medical services. It is vital that they have some sort of cash income.
If they grow some kind of a cash crop, whether it be vegetables or peanuts or coffee or whatever it is that they're growing, there's not really a good way for them to hike it to town, and it's much more reasonable for us to carry it on our airplane. And so what usually happens is we bring their produce in and then we take store goods out for them or whatever they'd like to arrange on the flights. It's a unique way to help them help themselves by just providing the service that gets their produce or whatever it is into market to sell, and then they have the opportunity to be a little bit of an entrepreneur and do something with it. Most of our tithes and offerings come from such efforts. It is exciting to see, and exciting to see them doing that, and doing something and growing something, selling it, and maybe learning to fish instead of just be given the fish.
That becomes their link to the outside world then, so we can take in supplies that they need, basic needs. We can also bring sick patients out. We can basically service those communities, and it's their link to the outside world.
Though it's indirect, almost all that we do is related to spreading God's word, God's love, and assisting the work of mission in Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea is a land of extremes, contrast, and vibrant color. Anthropologists have identified over 1,000 distinct cultures in Papua New Guinea and more than 850 separate languages.
The talk fishing has developed as the lingua franca that unites all these 700 plus different languages and enables them to communicate with each other. It's very, very much developed as a language of trade, and that was how it started off. But it is developed as a language all of its own. It's got elements of German, it's got elements of English, it's got elements of other languages who have had influence in the early trade and outside contact with Papua New Guinea. And it's an emerging language too. I notice, particularly with those that have had a higher education at university levels, that it's becoming much more anglicised.
Okay, morning all, Geta. Morning. Okay. Pasta ma you may pray pasta. Papa God, you stop on top of heaven, me talk thank you, you give him this nupla day, nice pla weather. Me pray now you come one time, me pla help him ball this kid up good, run good, and I put it on safe lock Corey. Me talk thank you and pray name belong Jesus. Amen. 45 minutes, okay? Okay.
Chook fishing is actually a very descriptive language, and sometimes you can say things a lot more concise than we do in English, but sometimes it takes a lot longer because things tend to be described rather than just defined, which makes it a very colourful language. We have a lot of fun with it, and as you pick up the local, like any language, it has its local idiom. And when you've been here for some time and you're familiar with some of that, they refer a lot to talk bokus, or what we would call talk pixa, or in English, parables. And so if you want to say something very, very important, very hard to somebody, you'll tell a story. I'll just give you a little illustration. A few years ago we had some problem when I first came here with some break and entry at the hangar facility, and I had a pretty good hunch of what was happening and who was responsible, because within half an hour of us coming on the scene we had people saying, oh, we've heard that you had a break-in and had some trouble, we could provide security services for you. So I had a pretty good idea of who was actually responsible. So I told a story about a man who had a pig, and he gave it to somebody else to look after, and he didn't look after that pig. The pig died, and I said, would he give him another pig to look after? And the head went down. I've not seen that man in the last 5 years, and we have never had a single incident in the last 5 years. He got the message, and he spread the message far and wide that Adventist Aviation personnel knew the culture, knew the language, and were not to be messed with.
My main role here and responsibilities is the maintenance manager. What that means is I'm responsible for looking after all the aircraft, making sure that they're maintained to the highest and safest standards for our pilots as they go out and fly out in the difficult short airstrips that we operate into as we serve the remote communities of this country, Papua New Guinea. So because of the country and the short rough airstrips, most of the airstrips are just built on the side of mountains, and there's not too many safe places to land an aircraft aside from those airstrips if something was to go wrong. So we operate to the highest safety standards. The rules here in Papua New Guinea are very similar to the rules in other countries of the world in regard to committing aviation. The aircraft, they're coming in approximately every 6 weeks for a service, and when they come in they're usually out of the air anywhere between 2 weeks to 4 weeks. The reason we spend this amount of time on the aircraft is to make sure that we go right through them and we keep them up to the highest maintenance standards, so the pilots can feel confident in the aircraft that they fly and operate. I've been here at Adventist Aviation since end of 2004. We've seen some significant changes during that time. We've moved from operating small 6-seater piston engine aircraft to 10-seater turbine-powered aircraft, which gives a greater margin of safety and performance, as well as the additional capacity to serve the needs of the church and also the remote communities of Papua New Guinea. Secure all these little bolts with lock wire. We don't want them coming undone. Some engine oil on the fittings where they go together so it all slides in nicely. Adventist Aviation Services is here to provide the transport logistics to the church so that pastors, nurses, teachers can go out and serve those remote communities which otherwise they wouldn't be able to access because a lot of those communities don't have roads going to them. The other option of course is to walk in, which can take weeks and weeks of travel, dangerous travel, crossing big rivers. As well as all the dangers of the journey, snake bites and things like that. So the aircraft provide a safe, reliable and efficient means for the church workers and church administrators to be able to go out and meet and serve the needs of those living in remote communities.
So our first priority is to provide transport services as required by the Adventist Church, and that ranges from leadership visiting around the various areas throughout the country to the local, provincial offices of the church, getting their teachers, their missionaries, their pastors, their district directors out to visit, to nurture their church members throughout their area, particularly those remote and isolated areas that the only way to get there is by air services. We also support other supporting ministries of the Adventist Church, things like ADRA, It Is Written, with their projects and their development work that they're doing in the country.
And we have some mountains that are close to 15,000 feet tall, and they're in ranges that run for hundreds of miles. So I mean they're quite long, and there's mountains everywhere. The airstrips are all planted right on the side of the mountains in some places and in valleys, and provides interesting weather and interesting strip conditions, and makes it I don't know, just a little bit more edgy, if you will, but manageable. It's I think the biggest challenge is, like flying in Papua New Guinea, is just the total lack of any aviation infrastructure as far as weather goes, or strip condition reports, or pilot reports, or whatever. It makes it difficult to. You usually don't know what you're going to go see until you get there, and then you have a good look at it.
The aircraft behind me is a Pacific Aerospace 750. It's a single-engine turbine-powered aircraft that can carry 2,000 pounds of cargo. We see Adventist Aviation Services as an extension to the Adventist Church's humanitarian work. There are very few operators in the country, commercial operators, that will service and support the remote communities. The people of Papua New Guinea are very open and welcoming to those that they see as contributing to their society and contributing to their country. For example, Adventist Aviation is welcomed because we're seen as an operator and as an organisation that is here to serve not only the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Papua New Guinea, but also those in the community as well. We don't discriminate. We do work for other mission operators. We do work for other church organisations. We do work for NGOs, government, as well as anyone that wants to hire us, as well as the grassroots people.
We just got back from a little village called Sindini, about a half-hour flight out and a half-hour back. We saw some amazing countryside along the way. On the way out, we took a passenger and his store goods, about 1,000 kilos worth of anything from rice, noodles, tinned fish, chicken feed, little baby chicks, rice grinders, you name it. Anyway, all kinds of stuff out there for him. He'll probably sell it in a village store. But yeah, kind of a neat opportunity. Even though it's not a mission-specific flight, we are helping to support a rural community that wouldn't have services otherwise, and we have an opportunity to interact with both Adventists and non-Adventists, and share with them, whether it just be the fact that we're there to give them a hand and do something for them, where it's very difficult to get similar services. So it's a unique opportunity, and in a lot of ways it's as enjoyable as the mission flying, because we are interacting with maybe people that aren't believers, and it's kind of a pleasure to do, and you also see immediately that you're meeting needs.
I really enjoy when we do medivacs, because if you, like myself, when I go into the local areas, it's very, very remote, and it's very hard to get medical assistance. That's why the only option is through the plane. So if we don't make an attempt on that one, then probably somebody must lose a life. Like if we didn't do a medevac for pregnant women, then probably the child inside the mothers plus the mother too. Sometimes it's happened.
The official church membership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Papua New Guinea is about 260,000. However, from surveys that have been done, on any given weekend there can be as many as 1 million adults and children worshipping in Adventist churches around the country. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is the 4th largest denomination in Papua New Guinea, and over the years has contributed in a very significant way to the development of education services, health services, and opening new areas. Many of the airstrips we fly into have been built at the instigation of Adventist Aviation and mission personnel to serve those rural communities.
She has been here for many years, but some services has not reached this area until Western lifestyle came in, and then it brings a lot of things which changes life, like foods like cooking well and salt, some things which he has not seen in the past. And then the meal from last year changes. Most people, they continue plant rice, and then it improves their lifestyle, growing their own rice to meal.
We are growing our own rice. Last month we produced 10,900 kg.
Okay, name Kuas, Sapor.
He says in the past his life was not good. After the pastors said a word, he changed his life, and then he becomes a Christian. And now at the moment he's one of the deacons. Government never recognized these people, but Seventh-day Adventists came in then, and then it changed a lot of lives. And at the moment people are getting service from this small health center. The Adventist Aviation helps them in many ways. When they harvest coffee or rice or peanut, they normally urinate the Goroga base, and then the plane usually come and take whatever that will bring them or get them out.
300 to 400 population in this clinic. This clinic was brought into Kapi in 2007. This is my storeroom. I got these medicines by plane. They brought some, and some I got it from the provincial health office. Most people are malaria patients, and some with coughs and upper respiratory tract infections. In a month I received 200 to 300 patients. In 1 year I received 500 to 600. When I work here, every morning, afternoon I pray for God to help me, because I'm not, if I'm not capable enough to work here, okay, you help me with your power.
We enroll children 12 and below. Children, we have more than 300. Most of the children comes nearby village. Our school has not improved much, but we are trying to get children at least learn something which will help their lives, at least to read or write.
We had a pretty good day today. Just moved a sawmill out to a clinic that they're going to use out there to do some more building. We did 10 landings and flew around 4 hours. We've moved all sorts of things from store goods and produce to education materials, medical supplies. Just brought back a medical patient back here into Goroka. The weather's been kind to us. It's really been a good day here in Papua New Guinea, and had a chance to see a good variety of what it is we do here in the Eastern Highlands particularly, but also throughout the whole country.
Our work's very critical to the nurturing of the church and the community in these remote areas. There's no other way of getting there, and so we take ministers, church leaders out to run meetings, to run outreach programs, camp meetings. But more importantly too, we nurture the church through making sure that schools are able to operate, clinics are able to operate, getting the supplies for those schools and clinics out to those areas. And it's interesting, one of the comments that we hear most often when we land is, and it doesn't matter where it is, so 7-day companies. The Adventist Church has come here. No, an aeroplane has landed, but in their minds, that aeroplane coming is the church coming and doing something for them. Doesn't matter whether we're doing something for the government, doesn't matter whether we're doing something for an individual local business person who's running a little trade store. It doesn't matter whether we're coming to get their produce out to market. Church 7-day companies. The Adventist Church is interested in us, in our community. We're not forgotten, we are cared about.
Adventist Aviation Services provides a critical transportation service to the church in Papua New Guinea, as well as important service to the communities in PNG. We move pastors, teachers, health workers. We fly supplies for clinics, medicines, and immunizations. We do emergency medical evacuation flights for communities in rural areas. We also fly building materials for new churches, clinics, and schools. We fly the deceased when they passed away, their coffin back to wherever they're from. It means a lot to the people here. We also move whatever crops they might grow into market for them and then store goods back out to their villages. That provides a lifeline for them into the city centers.
Working in a country like Papua New Guinea can often be very difficult and challenging, communications-wise, transport logistics-wise, in many different aspects like that. So every day we face lots of challenges, and the way that God has led and blessed Adventist Aviation Services is very evident. We're reminded of that every day.